Good day, everybody. Yossi, your mic is muted. Hey, we're back from Sukkot
Shalom.
as better people for the Lord, and always Sukkot is very uplifting and regenerates us to get on fire even more. So, Yossi,
Amen.
how's everything over in the UK?
How is everything in the UK? I don't really know. I don't watch the TV, so I don't keep it up to date with the news, which is always just depressing and is designed to keep you down and to radicalize you to one particular agenda or another, depending on who is paying the media bosses the most in the particular week. So, so I tend to keep out of it. But what I'm going to say is that the weather is okay. It's getting colder. That the roads are working. People are still going to work. So I presume we're not in World War III.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, we actually are in World War III. If you think about it, we haven't stopped being in war since World War I. We're continually in war. But people imagine that we're so used to living in war, in a state of war, that we don't realize that we're living through the war, what Judaism calls the war of Gog and Magog. But I think Christians are up in the air about whether we are in the war of Gog and Magog or in the tribulations which come before the 1,000 years. You talk about the book of Revelations. And the book of Revelation should be read linearly. It's actually a linear progression. It's just because it's written about the powers and principalities and the spiritual forces at play in the world. Just like any prophetic book, people don't realize that it's a linear description of how time has been playing out. When we talk about the locusts, remember the swarm of locusts, which comes, I think, is in the sixth seal, not the sixth seal. The sixth seal. That swarm of locusts is relevant to the book of Joel and refers to the invasion of it was the not the Maccabees, the Seleucids. There's a Seleucid invasion, and then after that you had the Seleucids. No, it wasn't. It was the book of Joel is actually to do with the Babylonian invasion, and then after that you've got the seventh trumpet with the sixth. That's the fifth trumpet. I'm getting confused with my trumpets. The fifth trumpet is the locusts, isn't it? Right. The sixth trumpet is the chimeras, which is the Greeks. The Greek symbol of the Greeks is a chimera. It's a lion with a snake's tail, and it's got a goat riding its back. Yeah. And that's the Greek invasion. So the chimeras and Alexander of Macedon's invasion, and their numbers were many, many millions. And then it carries on with the work of the Noahites in the first century, and it talks about the two witnesses, and the two witnesses refers to the Toshavim. Because that means Noahides, the two witnesses of the Noahides, they're the two olive trees. You see, the Jews are a cultivated olive tree, and then the non-Jews are the uncultivated olive tree. And if you are both olive trees, if you're the two olive trees, you're the cultivated and the wild olive tree, then that means you have been grafted in. You have the wild olive tree branch, but you have the cultivated olive tree root. So you're both olive trees. You're the two. That's why the symbol of the two witnesses is very much the same symbolism, and descriptions which are given to Elijah and Elisha. So it's basically Elijah is Hatishbi, the Tishbite. The Tishbite is a Toshav, which means a Noahide. So Elijah is actually a Noahide prophet as opposed to one of the children of Israel. And so the Noahides are doing their business, and that's what the two witnesses are. And it mentions specifically they're working in the city where their Lord was crucified. Of course, this means Messianic Noahides, people who believe in Jesus of Nazareth as Messiah. And then after that, we hear the seventh trumpet is blown, and then the woman in the sky is seen in the sky. and she is the church of Thyatira. And she gives birth to a son who will rule the nations with an iron rod. And that is the Gospels. That's the Bible. That's the book of the Bible of the Council of Nicaea. The first time the Bible was published and sent abroad. 50 copies were published at the Council of Nicaea, much to the distress of or perturbation for Constantine, who had a very different plan in mind for the church. He was promoting Arius, and then you have St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, actually punched Arius on the nose. It was a very dangerous thing to do because Arius was the representative of Constantine, the emperor. So he didn't fear for his life. He punched Arius on the nose, and that's basically interesting because Nicholas is the Greek version of the name Michael. And that's quite interesting because the angel Michael fights against the dragon and his angels, and the dragon loses his place in heaven, meaning that the Roman emperor is no longer allowed to call himself God. And the dragon has a place in heaven means he's allowed to call himself a god. So the emperor is no longer allowed to call himself God, means he loses his place in heaven, and he's very angry. He goes off to make war against the rest of the children. This is how the Holy Roman Empire emerges, when he stands on the shore of the sea, and out of the sea comes this terrible beast with 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns. And that is the Holy Roman Empire, or Christendom, as we know. It was created by Constantine, the Constantinian family, not just Constantine, but his descendants. You know, that Constantinian dynasty, very much representing the dragon and giving this power to them. And it goes on. So it's all a linear story. It's not actually a bit here and a bit there. So the story tells us that there is the Dark Ages, that the kingdom of the beast is thrown into darkness, and that there is an image of the beast which comes up out of the beast who has 2 horns like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. He is the beast of the ground, and he causes people to make of the land, that is Haaretz, that is the Middle East, that's the Holy Land, to make an image of the beast. What could be an image of Christendom? What empire is a religious empire based on the Bible, which is comparable to the religious empire allegedly based on the Bible, which merges with the Constantinian dynasty? It's that mirror image of the beast is the Caliphate. It's the Islamic Empire, which emerges with the Abbasids. It's a mirror image of the beast, created by the same patriarchs of Jerusalem. The Patriarch of Jerusalem is the one who actually crowned the king of the Caliph and gave him the title King of Jerusalem. So that priesthood, which used to serve Constantinian dynasty, then started serving the Abbasid dynasty, and that continued, and then the whole kingdom was thrown into darkness. That's the Dark Ages. And you had this terrible tribulations of plagues and earthquakes and famines, and all these terrible things happened. And then emerges out of that time, this is history as we've gone through it, emerging out of that time is the rule of law, the word of God, actually. That is, the rule of law established, and what we understand today as the rule of law, began with the rule of the biblical law, which took over the planet. Once upon a time, for 1,000 years, it's true, from the 900s until the 1900s, the Bible was king on the planet. People had to obey the New Testament and the rules set out in the New Testament under pain of death. That time has gone and is never coming back. You know, that's because we are now past that rule of law, where he ruled with the world with an iron rod, and the nations, and he trod the winepress of God's wrath, and the nations, all the pagans around the world, whether they were Aztec human sacrificing pagans, or cannibal tribes in Papua New Guinea, or wherever they were in the world, they were massacred by Christian missionaries going around the world in 2 ways. They either were slain in the spirit, or they were slain literally. but they had to be slain. That is how the biblical prophecies always come around, right? So eventually, everybody came to know about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this is recognized. Maimonides recognizes this, thanks to the spread of Christendom and, of course, the Islamic Caliphate under their agenda. But while they're pushing their political agenda to make all people worship them, at the same time, they can't help the fact that the Bible is also fighting against them. So the emperors lose their divine right of kings, and they are actually become constitutional. They have to serve according to the law of the Bible. Otherwise, they will be replaced by their knights. The gentleman will overthrow them and put a new king on the throne. And likewise, the same with the caliphate. The caliphs originally operating with impunity to do what they want, but they're also eventually, after the Crusades come along, this is the Battle of Armageddon, the Crusades gathering in the plain of Megiddo to have a big battle. And after this Crusade period, there's a rule of law. That is the rule of law which emerges out of this. And at the end of that rule of law time, we enter into what's called the War of Gog and Magog. Satan is released from his prison. Satan, being a national spirit, because the nations worship their national spirits, they don't worship God. They worship their own patriotism and the spirit of their nation. And there is one national spirit which impersonates the God of heaven, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That kind of nationalism, that kind of national spirit is the ultimate demon. It's the prince of demons, if you like. It's the big Satan. And that is, of course, unfortunately, Jewish nationalism, which didn't exist for 1,000 years, but emerges again at the end to deceive the nations and cause them all to come from the north, the south, and east, and the west, and take a plunder on the Holy Land. And that's where we are right now. We're in the War of Gog and Magog. So that's what the Jewish position is. We're in the War of the Gog and Magog, and everything is going to come to conclusion very soon. And the Book of Revelations, you'll think, well, why is this Jew talking about the Book of Revelations? Because according to the Jewish tradition, according to the a Baraita, which is discussed in the Talmud, which is called the Baraita is called the Telia, and according to the Telia, this Book of Revelations was written by Rabbi Simon Kloppas, Hatzadik, who was commissioned by the Sanhedrin to create a Noahide religion for the nations, and he did so using the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. And he did this in the year 86. And so Simon Kalkalpus was also known as John, and he was on the island of Patmos, and he wrote this book, and that's the Book of Revelation. So I'm quite happy to quote from the Book of Revelations when talking about the mission which we do, the Petach Chamor tradition. Is the Petach Chamor podcast, so all of that is relevant to what we're doing. So it's also relevant. Sorry to go on for so much. But it's also very relevant because we have Halloween coming up. Now, Halloween is a weird holiday. It has its origin in originally the eve of the Christian feast of All Saints and All Souls, with the 1st and 2nd of November. And it was the evening beforehand. That Feast of All Saints and All Souls in Catholicism is what the Mexicans call the Day of the Dead, the Mexican Day of the Dead. It's quite a popular holiday in Mexico and amongst Hispanic people in general, the Day of the Dead. But nowadays has become a pagan opportunity for people to practice witchcraft and Satanism, and has basically become a symbol of like the holiday for the pagans, the holiday for the Satanists. It's their time of the year, and I think it's very good for Messianic believers, for Christians and Messianic Hebrews, to try and emphasize this time of the year as what it used to be long time ago, which was a time to read the Book of Revelations. That's what it was in the liturgies, and in fact, in some of the older Christian churches, at this time of the year, they still read the Book of Revelations. That's where the books are. So it was a scary time of the year. Yes, it was a scary time in liturgy. And they did this because the pagans had a holiday in Europe. In the Celts had a holiday called Samhain, which is the Celtic New Year, and they wanted to sort of replace the pagan holiday with something more biblical, and so they started reading made the readings of the books of Revelations at this time of the year. And I think it's a good thing to do. I think it's a very good thing to start reading the book of Revelations at this time of the year. And so that's why I was starting to talk about it at the beginning of the show. All right, I've waffled on for a long time.
No, it's good. It's a good preface. I like what you're saying. I like it a lot.
So I wonder how my sound is, because on my side, the computer is freezing quite a lot. And I'm wondering if
You're not. You're flowing very good. At first, we had a little bandwidth problems, but it's been going real smooth. Very good.
Very good. All right. So that's my take on the Book of Revelations. Now, I wonder if what you said you would help me understand what might be the pushback I could get from from Christians of the scheme that I've described for the Book of Revelations right now.
Go ahead. No,
I've heard of pre-tribulation, post-tribulation. I've heard of preterists, full preterism, semi-preterism. Okay. Do Christians have, I mean, they don't seem to have there's no one clear view.
Not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I grew up understanding that Jesus could come back at any second, any minute at all. And that's the Baptist viewpoint of it that I grew up with. And then it got to learning as I got older about Armageddon, because the Baptists don't really teach that. They don't really teach Revelation as far as, I remember. And my biggest problem is that I was involved with organizations that were non-denominational, and it incorporated many different views. And I used to listen to all the big teachers. I've been on the stage with several different people, and I've never taught Revelation because I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. But then there was a time when it seemed like there were 5 or 6 different big teachers all teaching Revelation at the same time, and one would say this, and one would say this, and one would say this, and it's kind of like, in my mind, it's like, I don't get it. Who am I supposed to believe?
Yeah.
Because there's so many different viewpoints on it. And my whole deal has always been, it's the only thing really, the only book that really deals with 100% in the future. 100%. And if you're not versed in all the scriptures before Revelation, if you're not versed in that and have an understanding of that, then the book of Revelation, you just can't understand all the different things. So my mind went to, well, I just don't want to have anything to do with it at all, because it's all in the future.
I found
that type of thing. And so they had several different views on what is going to happen. Like Armageddon has to happen, and then half of the people will go up into heaven, or we're taken out before Armageddon, we're taken out afterwards, New Jerusalem following all of that and everything. And there's just so many teachings out there that I just put it away. Whatever happens in the future, whatever happens. So I'm not a good person to know a lot about Revelation, or the different things, just what I've heard in passing.
The interesting thing, Mark, is that most of the Christians that I speak to are like that, unless they say, you'll have to speak to my pastor.
Yeah, right.
And I find that very interesting, because it's like, so the only people who are allowed to talk about the book of Revelations are pastors, and every other Christian who says, I don't know, it's too confused, I don't know, and they don't touch it. And I feel like this is a system of control. I feel like that the reason I think it's a system of control. I think that the pastors have all been told in different denominations to give different descriptions of it, in order to prevent Christians from touching on and approaching it, and keeping Christians in a sense in a state of confusion concerning it. And I do believe that this is actually part of a system of control. At the end of the day, whether you're from the Catholic traditional churches, Orthodox churches, or whether you're from the Reformation churches, they all don't like what we talked about before, the radical reform. Christians who, or any believers who actually take the Bible seriously and say, well, what does the Bible have to say for itself? They hate that. They hate the radical. That's why they call them radical reform.
Yeah, that's right.
They want to keep them on the fringes out over there. People and talk about this like, well, they're a bit loony, you know. The Anabaptists, the Mennonites, the Amish, the people who don't get involved with society, they're on the fringes over there, and they're all a bit weird. And I feel that's intentional. And I know I'm going to sound a bit like a conspiracy theorist here, but I feel like that Calvin himself and Luther maybe Luther was a bit of a rebel from the Catholic Church, but Calvin, I think, was a stooge. I think he was actually created by the Catholic Church to take control of the Reformation, and perhaps Luther himself was also encouraged to do that too, because there were things happening in Europe at that time to do with what we call now Anabaptism, or the radical reform. They were different names. They were Paulicians, they were Cathars, I think they called them what they called Begards, they were called Lollards. There were many of these groups around. Moravian, there was the Moravian Anabaptists, and there were the Hussites, and there were different kind of reform movements going on in Europe, trying to find out what the truth was, which coincides with the Crusades and the education which started to spread amongst the knights, when the knights were starting to read these Bibles to understand what it was they were fighting for, because previously they were only for the clergy and only in Latin, and they were starting to translate these things, and people started to have a lot of confusion. Templar knights would go and fight for the church in the Holy Land. I think the Templars are like the first Protestants, and they would come back and they say, well, you know what? There's just no difference between what we are fighting against and the people who sent us. And the Templars became very powerful in Europe. They ended up owning more land than the Pope, and that made the Pope turn against the Templars and try to shut them down, and persecuted them terribly, made all sorts of lies and horrific lies against the Templars, and accused them of the same things they always accuse all the heretics in Europe of. They're all into buggery and sodomy, and that's the main thing that they say to make you turn away from this particular group of Protestant, this group of Protestant. They're all homosexuals, which is ironic, really, because I think if you look at the Catholic priests at that time, they were the ones who were shaving their beards and making themselves look like women. It's quite interesting. The accusation which came from them was always that everybody else was homosexual. And I feel like to myself, well, it might have been that the Catholic Church were the ones who were actually in denial, because you often find that with people who are that way inclined, that if they're in a state of denial, they're extremely aggressive against everybody else like themselves until they come out of the closet, and then they kind of calm down. And so the Catholic Church is at least the clergy. Francis, I'm sorry to insult, and I'm not meaning to insult any Catholics here at all, but Francis himself, the most recent Pope, struck me as pretty much a closet homosexual. And I think to myself that was probably the main reason for blaming every other movement as being homosexual whenever the Catholic Church wanted to strike down something. Anyway, the point is there was a lot of this happening in Europe. And it looked to me that the Protestant Reformation came at exactly the right time to save Western Christendom. And if the Protestant Reformation hadn't come at that time, we might have seen a different kind of the radical reform would have taken control, and Christianity would have gone in a different direction. Nevertheless, it was too late to bring back the kings as with the divine right, and they had to be subject to the law of the Bible. The New Testament was law, and if they broke the constitution at that time, they would be replaced by another dynasty, and hence the European dynasties never returned to what used to exist before the Crusades, with what we call the Carolingian dynasty, or the Merovingian dynasty as well. The Carolingians and Merovingians, who had the divine right to rule with impunity above the law, which was the way it used to be before the 11th century, before the 1000s. After that, though, gradually, I mean, it wasn't overnight, and it wasn't a beautiful thing. Suddenly everybody was happy. But gradually, the rule of law became stronger and stronger and stronger until the 20th century, and now has collapsed. So there was 1,000 years of the strengthening of the rule of law. And the law that everybody had to obey at that time was the Bible, was specifically the New Testament. And that time has passed. So the interpretation that I offer, and I think all Christians and all Messianic people should embrace this, is very straightforward. The book of Revelations is not about just the future. It's about the scheme of creation throughout the time that Adam and Eve, were cast out of the garden, until the time when we have the Olam Haba, when the new world, the world to come, is within our grasp. Is that age, what we call the Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day, is inaugurated. It's interesting because we just finished Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day. It's the 8th day of Sukkot. And what does it stand for? It stands for the beginning of the 8th day, because we believe that that there are like 7,000 years, and then an 8,000th year is the 8th day, which is the eternal day, which goes on forever. So the scheme of Judaism is pretty much like that. If you follow the Septuagint calendar, we're already at the time for the 8th day to begin. If you follow the Masoretic calendar, then it looks like we're just about to begin the 7th day. But it doesn't really matter. We have a calendar, and we know that there's discrepancies in the dates, whether that you're following the Samaritan Pentateuch, or whether you're following the Masoretic text, or whether you're following the Leningrad Codex, or whether you're following the Septuagint, or whether you're looking into the Talmudic dates. We know that there's a discrepancy over the dates. We are not dogmatic about this is the year 5008. Right. We're not dogmatic about that. We're just we use it as a sort of a rule of thumb, and it's the generally accepted dates that we use around the world. All Jews use around the world. We're not dogmatic about it, but we are about time for that towards the end of the 7th day, and Rashi had already explained when it's supposed to have started. According to Rashi, it started in the 1400s, and he said it started in the 1400s because, according to Saadia Gaon, before him, he said it had started and it would start in the 900s. And that's the rule of law, basically, the 1,000 years. And when Rashi came along and he looks around and he says, well, I don't see a kind of a messianic era here. It maybe it's good. And he kind of recalculates Saadia Gaon's times, and he says it's going to start 300 years later or 200 years later. And so each one is doing a different thing. Now, looking back at this time, we look back and there's a few rules. The first rule you have to bear in mind is that anybody from this generation is not as knowledgeable as the person from the previous generation, and is not as holy as somebody from the previous generation. As time goes by, we get less knowledgeable, and we also get less holy. We may be more knowledgeable about how the world works, but we're not more knowledgeable about the biblical scriptures and the meanings of things.
That's just the opposite of what it should be, though.
Yeah, it is.
We should be more knowledgeable and more spiritual and more
No.
understanding.
We get further and further away from the truth as time goes by, and we get more and more wrapped up in the world.
Because there's so many different views on so many different issues that it's hard to know what's the right one. It's exactly what was true back then and during that 1,000 years is still the same today.
Yeah, we get more and more worldly knowledgeable and less spiritually knowledgeable. Yeah.
That's true. Communication is so widespread and so easy these days, and everybody has access to post whatever they want.
Yes, and it looks like everybody's very clever, especially with these chat GPTs and AI sort of thing. But if you know those things can't even do basic maths. If you want to expose one of those things, just ask it a very simple question like, how do I do long division? A simple question, something you learned in school. And then see them waffle on for hours and hours about the most complicated. You'd think that long division was some kind of unsolvable equation, which the greatest minds of science could never really get around, or even more simple thing. If you actually give it an arithmetic, so let me see, any kind of calculation. I did one recently because I don't know if you know, I'm a systems engineer, and I did one recently. I asked this one of these GPTs. I asked it this simple question to do with velocity, and it went on and on and on and came up with a different answer. And I thought, this is curious. And I said, no, that's wrong because this. It says, oh, yes, you're right. And it gave me another long waffling answer with pages and pages of calculations. I said, no, that's wrong as well. And then it repeated. And so, yes, that's wrong. Sorry. And then it went another one with pages and pages of calculations, which gave the answer after apologizing for the wrong answer, gave exactly the same answer as last time. And I said, that's exactly the same answer. I said, the answer is this. And it went through. It's, oh, yes. I said, look.
That's
great. I asked you, how come you don't know maths? How come you can't do maths? I says, I'm a language model. I'm not really trained to do maths. I'm only trained to repeat what I've seen people saying on the internet. So if people are talking rubbish on the internet, I will talk rubbish. And most people can't do maths. So that's it. These things are useless. They're totally, people are trusting these things. And they're totally useless. Totally useless. But no, I was getting back to Saadia Gaon. I want to get back to Saadia Gaon. So Saadia Gaon lived in Iraq in the 9th century and the 8th century, the 9th and 10th century, early 10th century. And he said that all of this would begin in the 10th century. And Rashi comes along and says, well, no insult, no offense to Saadia Gaon, but I look around me and I see that it doesn't seem like we're living in that time. So may I offer my own assessment of the situation? And then a few other people come later and say, Rashi was wrong in the same sort of polite way. But we have to remember, no, we are not more knowledgeable than the previous generation when it comes to spiritual knowledge. And no, we are not more righteous than the previous generation when it comes to spirituality. Therefore, we should trust Saadia Gaon and his explanation of these things. And very important point is that he says that the Messianic day, that rule of law, will be a day of darkness, and nobody will notice it until the end of that day. So, and then this is from Zechariah. Zechariah also says the same thing, that this will be a day of darkness, but the light will come at the end of that day. So the end of that day corresponds, according to Saadia Gaon, to the 20th century, when just before like the 60s, which was basically the invention of the pill made the sexual revolution sort of happen in the 60s. Just before then, the world was probably the most righteous and most decent that it had ever been. America just won World War II, and people were basically decent and trying to stop fighting, stop killing, and they tried to set up the United Nations, which was a good intention to try and stop war. And then it all fell down. It all fell to pieces. So I think Saadia Gaon was correct, and we should not dismiss that. The other thing that happened is that in the 1950s, everybody respected the Bible, and then by the time the end of the 1960s came, nobody respected the Bible. So it was like the peak of biblical respect was in World War II. I would say World War I is even stronger. It was the Nazis who were the first pagan movement. They were the beginning of this Gog-Magog sort of war. In World War I, the soldiers even stopped fighting on Christmas Day in order to pray together, both sides. Now that's never going to happen. And they were all punished for doing that, both the German side and the Allied power side on the other side, the British side and the French on the other side. They were all punished for doing so. But then, and so that's like the peak of the power of the word on the earth was in the early 20th century. And it's been steadily eroded since then. So it was 1,000 years of the word, the power of the word coming into its authority on the planet. And people were killed for being idolaters and blasphemers, which is never going to happen again. It's not going to happen again unless, everybody in the world is converted to a decent monotheistic Bible-respecting faith, which I don't say it's impossible to happen, but it means that the remnant who understand this have got an awful lot of work to do, because just like when I said that the rule of law went around the world for 1,000 years, either you were slain in the spirit or you were physically slain for being a cannibal or an idolater and a demon worshipper. You were either literally slain or you were slain in the spirit and came around. So there's two ways of fulfilling the prophecy. And the same goes right now. The war of Gog and Magog we hear in the book of Ezekiel and the book of Revelations as well. The war of Gog and Magog will end when the armies of Gog and Magog are slain by fire from heaven. And that fire from heaven can come in two ways. It can either be spiritual fire from heaven, as, for example, the apostles in the upper room, when the fire came down from heaven upon them. Or they can be literally slain by fire, real fire from heaven. It's up to us. It's up to us. This is the story of Jonah as well. If the truth, God's word will be fulfilled. How do you want it to be fulfilled? Doing it in a nice way, or not accepting it. Jonah was wrong because he didn't understand that God's word would be fulfilled one way or another. And when the people in Nineveh repented, they were slain. The day of the Lord had come upon them. God's word, God didn't lie. They were slain in a good way. And we can either be slain in a good way, with a good interpretation of the word of God, or in a wicked way, because we were wicked.
Right.
So I want everybody to start, pick up your book of Revelations, read through it. It's not difficult. It's a linear story of mankind. The four riders of the apocalypse. All of this is just stages, step by step by step. If you understand in spiritual eyes that the things which happen in history, I describe the book of Revelations from the locusts until the war of Gog and Magog as if it was one continual story of history. And that's actually how it is. That's how the book of Revelations is. It is a story of history. It's just the continual story of how things unfold throughout time. But if you don't see it with spiritual eyes, you will never see it. That's why people are still waiting for the clouds to open and the horse to gallop down and the rule of the word to come, and they missed it. They were left behind. They missed it.
It could be kind of like the way I saw it. It scared me. Before I had read the whole book of Revelation, but I didn't understand. And then when I started hearing so many different teachers teach different things about it, I think it scared me because it was so important that everybody thought that we should all know their opinions on what is, how it's interpreted, that I thought it was extremely important, but I couldn't understand it. So it scared me. And that made me not want to dive into it more, but to just back off from it.
We probably should go through it since it's this time of the year. Everything is, it's autumn time in the northern hemisphere, at least. Everything is dying back, and it's a good time to go through
reread it and read it in a neutral sense.
Yes, I mean, you have to have some assumption. There has to be some simple assumption. I don't like these people who have tried to tell me over the years that it flips back and forth, and this is in the past, and this is in the future, and this is then, and this is coming then, and then it goes back in time, and then it ties itself up in all kind of weird, wonderful knots. God doesn't make your religion so far away in the skies that you can't reach it, or so deep into the sea that you can't reach it. It's in your hands.
That's right.
So you must be a very, very just beware, keep away from such charlatans. They want to tie you up in knots because they want to confuse you. So the assumption, which I think is the safest assumption, is that you read it in a linear way. It is linear. Right. It just goes from the beginning to the end. Yeah. Very straightforward.
One continuous story.
It's just one story. And if it's difficult to see what's going on at any particular time, say, well, what was happening in history at that time? It's sadly probably because the reader hasn't got enough of the symbolism of the Bible fixed in their heads to be able to recognize, oh, I know the locusts. Yes, that's Joel. Joel was talking about the locusts. Oh, chimeras. Yes, of course, context. That's the Greeks are the chimera is the symbol of the Greeks. If they don't have these things fixed, it can get a little bit misleading. I said, for example, the woman who gives birth in the book in chapter 12, after the seventh trumpet is blown, I said that she's Thyatira, for example, the church of Thyatira. How do I know that? Where did I get that from? It's actually written in the book of Revelations itself. It's there in the beginning of the book. It says when the angel is talking to the church of Thyatira, which actually means daughter in Greek. It also means daughter. So when he's talking to his daughter, he says, I will give you the one who rules the world with an iron rod. I will give him to you. Okay, I will give to you, daughter, the one who rules the world with an iron rod. And then you read later that there is this woman in heaven giving birth to one who rules the world with an iron rod. Oh, well, that's Thyatira then, because she's the daughter who gives birth to the one who rules the world with an iron rod. And then it's like, well, okay, so wait a second, that's not Mary. What's going on here? No, because remember that happens immediately after the seventh trumpet comes immediately after the sixth trumpet. You're not going to tell me that the sixth trumpet actually happens after the seventh trumpet. So it's like, why would it be the sixth and then the seventh trumpet? The sixth trumpet, it says their Lord was crucified in the city where their Lord was crucified, figuratively called Sodom and Gomorrah. So then the seventh trumpet, which comes after the sixth trumpet, and nobody should be able to twist your brains into thinking that somehow the sixth trumpet comes after the seventh trumpet. No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is very straightforward and simple. Their Lord was already crucified before they were giving their witness during the sixth trumpet. Then comes the seventh trumpet, and she gives birth to this child, who is whipped up into heaven at that time. So no, it's not Jesus who was crucified already in the city at that day. It's something else. And it says very specifically that this is the word of God. He is the word of God. Ah, well, Jesus is the word. No, it's the literal word of God. It's the Bible, folks. It's not complicated.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, don't get tied up in knots by these people telling you that none of this has come to pass yet. I'm the only person who's got the ability to see all this. It's simple. It's accessible. It's within your hands. You just need to know the symbols of the Bible and read the Bible a lot. And the more, and it says at the beginning of the book, and this is true, the more you read that book of Revelations, the more you will come to understand it. And I did this. I think I must have written about maybe 59 times by now. And each time you read that book, it's like, oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. It becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. So just keep on reading it through from beginning to the end, beginning to the end. Remember, it's a sequential story. And gradually you will start to understand it's just the story of history, which is not going to wrap up for a long time because we have to get into the 8th day. But the 8th day is about to come. And it's in our hands to do this. The 8th day can come when we bring down fire from heaven upon the armies of Gog and Magog. But how is it going to happen? It says that the Havarim will go through the land. This is the book of Ezekiel. The Havarim will go through the land and will actually give Gog and Magog a burial place in the land of Israel, in the valley of Haman Gog. In Judaism, you have to understand, what does that mean? To get a burial place in the land of Israel means to gain a place in the world to come. So Gog Magog's armies will gain a place in the world to come. How is it possible that Gog Magog's armies can gain a place in the world to come unless they are converted? So the Havarim understand that we have a duty to go and convert the armies of Gog Magog. And if we don't, they will still be destroyed by fire, but we will be guilty of what Jonah was guilty of. We will have avoided our duty to take the message to the armies of Gog Magog. So we've got to take that message to them, even though we are few in number. But we do have to do that.
Well, with the message skewed in so many different ways, that's why I take the position of being in general and not get into too many specifics about different things. When I talk to people, I try to keep it as general as possible, but most of the time when I'm getting this word out, what you're talking about doing here is I like to ask questions first to see what they already know or they already think they know about this whole situation. That helps me to take it from that point and either show them a different path or maybe balance out the path they're on. Maybe they're not that far off, but to explain to them and have them look to the future more as a positive thing than a scared negative thing.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with people being scared about this. Is because it's been presented so negatively for so long that you don't have a balanced view of it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying at the beginning, though. We don't realize that we've been living through that war for almost 100 years now. But we have.
Okay. That's good.
It is actually, if you were to look back at it in the future one day, 1,000 years in the future, look back, you'll say, what a horrific time to live. It is actually a horrific time, but we're numb to it already.
Yeah.
So that terrible things which are going to happen in that book are happening right now already. And if you don't find the current time terrifying, that's because we're quite numb to how horrific it is. The other thing is this: every interpretation that you've heard where they say, the beast may refer to this person or that person, or the whore of Babylon may refer to this church or that church, or it maybe refers to Jerusalem, or maybe it refers to the Pope, or maybe it refers to, whatever. Every interpretation you've heard is true. Every contradictory, different interpretation you've heard is true, because during the time of the war of Gog and Magog, it's the time of absolute evil. It's the worst possible time. Every single bad thing which has ever happened before is trying to be brought back now. So If somebody says Obama is the beast, he is. If somebody says Donald Trump is the beast, he is. If somebody says Prince Charles or King Charles is the beast, he is. If somebody says the Vatican is the beast, they are. All of them are. Because whoever else you want to. Everybody, because that's the war of Gog and Magog. That's the time. Yeah.
That's right. That's good. That's real good. I love it.
It's all chaos right now. If they say, do we have got enough time? I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, we get another 5 minutes, 5 to 6 minutes. I don't know. I lost my thought. I was thinking of something else that. Never mind. Now I'm sorry. I'm a little distracted. I've got to get the next show set up.
I'll just say this.
So on our schedule, they're messed up right now. So I'm just
okay.
I'm good. I'm good. Don't worry about it. We're fine.
So I'll go on with this then. So if somebody says that Islam is the whore of Babylon, or if somebody says the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon, or if somebody says Jerusalem is the whore of Babylon, you've got there an Islamic answer, a Muslim answer, and a Jewish answer, right? It refers to the Jews, it refers to Muslims, it refers to Christians. They're all correct because every group of people has the beast amongst them, the whore of Babylon amongst them. It has the beast of the earth amongst them. It's got the idol amongst them. Right. Every single group of people has got this. And it pertains to every single group of people. And so if you say, well, that argument was very convincing. Yes, it would be. During the time of the war of Gog and Magog, it would be. Because everybody has these characteristics about them. Historically, Christendom, the Christian Empire, that is the Holy Roman Empire, was the beast. Historically, the Caliphate, the Islamic Empire, was the image of the beast, the mirror opposite of the beast, image. Historically, the Patriarchate of the clergy, specifically the Patriarchate of Jerusalem, was the beast from the earth, Haaretz, the beast from Haaretz, who looked like a lamb, looked like a Christian, but spoke like a dragon, but is actually a wicked person. And he was the false prophet who anointed the image as well, who causes fire to come down from heaven. It's called holy fire. They still do this in Jerusalem today. The Patriarch of Jerusalem still performs this magical ritual where he makes fire come down from heaven, allegedly in the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre, which was supposed to be where Jesus of Nazareth was buried. And these things have happened. Jerusalem, they say it was the whore of Babylon is a city which rules over the people of the earth. It's actually a polity. It's actually the Davidic family which rules over the people of the earth, because everybody wants to be of the house of David. The kings of Europe, all of them, all of the royal families of Europe wanted to claim to be descendants of David. The caliphs of the Islamic Empire also wanted to claim that they had some connection and descent from the house of David. And of course, whenever there was a false Messiah amongst the Jews, he always would claim to be from the house of David. The house of David is the whore of Babylon, which is split into 3 parts. It's split into a Christian part, a Muslim part, and the Jewish part, which is actually what happens to the whore of Babylon. She's described as a polity, which translates as city, but it also translates as a people who rule over the kings of the earth, which is the house of David. The house of David has gone sour, it's gone bad, it's gone off. But that doesn't bother us, because the son of David for Judaism, I'm talking about Judaism before the Holocaust, yes? We know that Messiah is the one described in the Machzorim, in the Machzor for Yom Kippur, in the Machzor for Rosh Hashanah. We see and read about the Mashiach in those books, our righteous Messiah who existed before the foundations of the earth, as Milifnei Bereshit. We read this. And in fact, in the book of Revelations, it says he was slain before the foundations of the earth, the lamb who was slain before the foundations of the earth. This is the Mashiach ben Joseph, who comes before Messiah ben David. Messiah ben David will come, and we believe with perfect faith that he will come. And though he may tarry, we continue to believe that he will come. But in the meantime, we have a Messiah ben Joseph, suffering servant, who has symbolized basically the spirit of the Jews, symbolized by every great Jew, if you're open to it, because I'm not speaking as a Christian or a Messianic believer. I'm speaking as an Orthodox Jew who loves Christians and loves Messianic believers and wants you all to be Noahides and wants all of them out there to be Noahides. But nevertheless, the spirit of Messiah ben Joseph is the suffering servant, the Jew who was taken into the gas chamber and went peacefully as a lamb led to the slaughter, fulfills Isaiah just as much as Jesus of Nazareth did 2,000 years ago. And we continue to live just the same if we talk about the resurrection in an Orthodox Jewish way. In the same way he lives, we also live, and the spirit of those Jews also continues to live. It may not be for everybody right now in this thick of the battle, but it's there. It's there. All right, I've got to go. Yeah,
it's good, brother. Very balanced. This is very good. I got a lot out of it that, you know, I just blown off Revelation for so long that I haven't heard it from this perspective. Like so many
Jewish
things,
right? Who's heard the Book of Revelations from a Jewish perspective?
Exactly. So good. Very, very good, brother. I really appreciate it. And we got to go. So we'll see you back next week.
Looking forward to it.
We sure appreciate you, man.
Okay, thank you. God bless you all. Take care. Shalom. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell somebody about the Messianic Lamb Network.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugi, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.